thank you for sitting down with us.
Absolutely.
Good to see you again.
Too.
Yeah, I'm really happy we could connect. I have a lot of questions for you today. We've talked off camera a couple times, and so I want to touch base on a couple of things that we've already discussed. I think the first thing I'd like to know is, as somebody who is a generational business owner and who has taken a really important building company inside the city and stewarded it into the next generation, just tell me about the way that you have continued to innovate and taken Shane Homes into the 21st century.
Well, that's not easy, to be honest with you, especially when you come from a company that was started by your father, and of course, he has his own view on what things we should do and we shouldn't do, and it as a family business, that can be a bit of a challenge.
Right.
But at least he understands that the world is changing around us, and even though he may not like it at times, you do have to make those changes. You do have to expand into different markets, and you do have to target those specific markets with exactly what they want in a home. Like, we go over to the Northeast in Calgary, which is very, very ethnically diverse. And, you have to develop spice kitchens because that's a part of their culture. And you have to understand the way that they live. And, that comes right down to how we manage their appointment here in the design center. It's a unique experience for each and every one. And that's just how you manage those changes.
And I think it's, something that not necessarily everybody thinks about, is that you're not just changing with the times in terms of, the latest in construction and design trends. You're also changing with demographics, yes. Right? And so as the population of our city changes, or the markets that people build in, you have to adjust the offering. And I think obviously, you guys have done a really great job of doing that. We've worked with a number of Shane Homes clients through Virtuo. Hopefully, we'll start to see more of your clients in the future, but we've gotten really strong feedback when, I've asked people, like, how was the process? Nothing but really, glowing reviews. And the word that, I think I hear a lot is value. Mm-hmm. And so how have you guys, aside from being a player in the industry for a really long time, how have you been able to consistently deliver, whether it's higher specifications or the right price point? Like, how have you been able to create that perception of value for your customers?
Well, again, you have to stay in touch with them. You have to do a tremendous amount of market research to find out exactly what makes them tick. Smart homes wasn't on the radar for anybody, until you end up down at CES and you walk through the entire show through, 2 pavilions of innovation for the home. And we knew at that point we had to do it.
Right.
Did we do it to the right level? No, not at first, but at least you get it out there and you learn from your mistakes. So you make adjustments like that the whole way through. It comes down to product, or the way you design your product, or like I said, even the experience that they have when they come and visit us here. You have to tailor make it to your customer base. And, Calgary has become so ethnically diverse over the years that you have to change with the times. I even see it with our staff here, how we've changed over times. This is, fairly male-dominated industry for a number of years, and now you see, you see more women in the workforce. You see more diversity in the workforce, and that drives your culture, and that drives the change of, who you are as a home builder.
Right, and I think that evolution is something that's really important in any business. Mm-hmm. But for sure, the home building and construction and design industry as a whole, I would say, has traditionally been slow to adapt.
Oh, yeah.
And we're starting to see some of that changing, which is exciting.
Oh, it's a big change, especially being around for 35 years, and you watch all the changes happen slowly but surely.
Slowly but surely.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you've been in this industry in a meaningful way, like sleeves rolled up, mm-hmm. For over 3 decades now.
Yes. Isn't that scary?
Yeah. Well, you look like a spring chicken, so
Thank
you're
God.
Doing something right. What would you say, if you had to kind of glaze over a few things that come top of mind that have really changed in the last 35 years from where, when you started your career to today? What are some of those just, 2 or 3 things that you would say are top of mind that are completely different?
Well, one thing that stands out in my mind is, the product, or sorry, the homes. I found that, as I entered the industry, people were buying homes more for resale. They had to set it up a certain way. They had to pick the right colors. It was very neutral. It was, well, quite honestly, very boring. But they're always looking to that event where they were selling the home, and they just wanted it to be more appealing to people. Now, people buy homes to live in them. They personalize them, and I think that's kind of one USP that we've had over the years with the red pen is just make whatever adjustments you want. And again, you see it. It's unique for everybody. We've watched as, we had lockdowns as an example. People were moving out of their condos. They were getting out of their office space. They were buying corner lots so they could have a stairwell down to their basement, which they set up as their new de facto office. So you can do anything that you want, but I mean, the fact that people live in their homes now and they work in their homes, I mean, that's been the most significant change that we've seen. The experience is the other thing. How people want to have an experience when they buy a home. It's not just show up, buy a house,
Make
pick a few
selections.
colors with
Yeah.
with an interior designer at some random place. We need a 10,000 square foot interior design center. We need to make it convenient for them, and they still can't find everything here, and we can't show everything here unless we put in 100,000 square feet. So thankfully, we align ourselves with some great partners that have their own unique showrooms, and I'll tell you what, they're not necessarily selected based on their best price. They're selected based on, what is their service level as well, and does it align with what we want our customers to have for an experience?
I think that is also something that's unique because, we work with a lot of different home builders, a lot of different designers in different markets, and not everybody is focused on client experience, value, and selection. Unfortunately, 15 or 20% less is sometimes often enough for people to make the change. And we are aligned in that regard because I believe that the customer experience, tailor making the presentation and the selection to the person coming in are extremely important. And so we've been investing in all things digital media, digital assets, social media, including sitting down with people like yourself for the concert series the last 18 months. And we've seen a lot of big gains. I know that's something that you guys also value and put time and energy into. So we've talked a little bit off camera, but how important are things like that, social media, digital asset presentations, and maybe talk to me a little bit about how some of your successful trade partners are digitizing the experience, or how Shane's digitizing the experience in order to be more efficient and more effective in communicating what options are available.
Well, Tyrell, that's exactly it. I mean, convenience is such a big shift that we've seen over the years, and I mean, we have this thing called the internet.
Yeah, I've never heard of it.
In 1996, we had our first website. My father was on my case about
96,
that.
really?
1996.
Okay.
My father was on my case about that for 8 years. Why are we sticking money into this thing? It doesn't make sense. It took him 8 years to leave me alone. And then we jumped headfirst into social media because you could see this is the way that you're going to market to people now. And he left me alone on that after 5 years. It was just the way the world was changing, and it's I guess to your point, you have all these things available to people now, and it's an expectation. So you require services like virtual, that virtual concierge. I mean, that's made a huge difference for us. They're not walking out of show homes with brochures anymore. They're scanning a QR code, and they're taking that home with them on their phone.
Right.
We have special little features like U-Tour, because not everybody can make it during show home hours. So I mean, they can apply for U-Tour.
What's that?
You can visit a show home any time of day.
Okay,
All
cool.
they have to do is apply with it, provide their ID, and they can go into the show home anytime they want at night.
Really?
So it's that added convenience
Really
for people.
neat.
Yeah.
Without a physical.
without a salesperson there. They can walk through that actual house that they viewed online and make sure that this is the right fit for what
That's
they
really
want.
cool.
And that's just another added convenience. I mean, it should be there, available to them 24/7, and no different than what we call build and price, where you can price out your home on a specific lot online. So it gives people a little bit of an idea. They can start imagining what their home is going to be like on their own time. And when they come to us, I mean, we have all the details available to the area managers. They can just pull the plan up that they prefer and the lot that they prefer and complete the deal from there.
Wow.
So yeah, we've been busy. I think like a lot of people have been busy, but I think we've been more busy, especially after going through 2020 and really just having to up our digital game.
And now, we have this giant tsunami that's growing with AI.
Mm-hmm.
And so as somebody that has been, an early adopter of digital presentation technologies, I'm assuming you guys have a lot of stuff in the hopper there.
Oh yeah, yeah. At least that's what they keep telling me.
That's what people in the office are saying. There's some really cool stuff that we're doing internally and working on enhancing our offering. And I think it's going to be really important. And I think that for people like yourself and the organization at Shane, that there's going to be some massive unlocks. So that's exciting that you guys are already focused on that and have these really great tools in place.
Well, like I said, it makes it easy when you've got buy-in from your executive team, your senior management team. Everybody wants it. They understand the benefits of it. It's just you can only do so much.
Yeah, and how do we actually add value by implementing this?
Well, and I think that's the underlying reason. I mean, that's always the question we ask is, how are we adding value here? We're not just adding time for the sake of a few extra reports or adding more activities for zero return. I mean, there's got to be a benefit to it. There's got to be a benefit to it for the consumer especially.
And so that's a conversation that I've had with internal meetings inside our organization and then with different stakeholders and industry partners and builders and designers on all things digital, but specifically on social media. Mm-hmm. Is, how do you measure the value of a brand and how do you measure the value of the time and the energy that it takes to do stuff like this? And so, I think you're right that it's at a baseline, an expectation for anybody that wants to position themselves as a leader in the space. Mm-hmm. But do you have any kind of insights or thoughts in terms of, where that value comes from in social media?
The ROI of social media is so hard to judge. I see the value personally. I know we see it internally, and largely because you can create or you can master more of a story that you're telling people. They want to know who they're dealing with, and that's really who they're buying from. They're buying from the personalities. They're not just buying the brand that we offer. They're buying the people who are within the company. And you have to show them the inside track. You have to show them exactly who they're dealing with and what the process is. And that makes that human connection.
Right.
That's the best way I can describe it. Can you attach an actual number to it? It's very difficult. But deep down, it's working.
Do you think that same? I agree. Do you think that same value or that human connection is translatable to everybody in the ecosystem? And again, we've talked about this off camera, where I find that when a builder or an interior designer or a consultant or somebody that you would traditionally think as a social media personality or someone that's really out there on social media, invest the time and energy to do this, people don't think twice. But I find that when trades do it, mm-hmm. The people with the drill, the people pouring concrete, I find that typically there's a perception that their social media and the content they're creating should just be focused on the work itself and not on the people and the connections like we've been focusing on. Mm-hmm. And so do you think that one path is better than the other? Do you think that, as a trade, that we should be changing the way that we approach social media? Or do you think it's kind of a whatever works for your brand and your personality?
No, I don't think you should change it at all. I think it's a must nowadays. I think you have to show people more than what you're offering. You have to show them the people behind the organization. You have to show them, you know, bits and pieces of your life, because that's how they make the connection.
Right.
You know, it's oh so important, you know. So here we are, we're sitting here, we're doing a podcast as an example. You know, should you not be doing that? I think it's fun. I think it's cool. I think it adds something to who you are as a brand and your culture.
Right.
I mean, why would you give that up?
I hope not
Just
to.
because, you know, you're supposed to be this and only this? Give me a break. That's stupid, quite honestly. I mean, but there are people out there who see zero value in it, and
Right.
you know that those are the businesses that may not be around long if they don't step up and take advantage of the tools that are available to them today.
100%. Do you think that your culture has a sense of innovation and forward thinking, and has been able to kind of adopt these new tools intentionally? So social media, and you talked about having a website in 96, which is like crazy. I didn't even know you could build a website in 96.
We did.
And like, what? Do you think that has just been part of your guys' like ethos, or is that like organically, or is that something that you're focused on, kind of fostering inside the organization?
I'd say both. You know, it's transformed organically, but it's definitely a strong focus of how we move forward. And I mean, I've seen it over the years in marketing where the teams have changed. You know, some people fall behind, or they're just not willing to change with the times. So I mean, you have to make those adjustments because you know it's right for your customers. It's right for your business.
Mm-hmm. And I think some people like struggle to adjust and adapt.
Oh, sure they do. Sure they do. I mean, if I think back in time, I mean, I know the people there because at one point I was hiring them. You know, it was 70% traditional media, 30% digital media. And when I asked for the flip, you could tell that there was a problem. You
Right.
could tell that there was
Like they're
definite
just not
concern.
grasping
You
this.
know, yes. I mean, you know, my father was one of them. You know, like he still believes in advertising on television. You sit there and say, we're not dealing with six channels to advertise on now. We're dealing with about 600. It
Yeah.
doesn't work that way anymore, and it's hard for him to rationalize until you explain to him. It's like, you're not our demographic anymore.
Right.
Hell, I'm not even the demographic anymore. That's the significant change that's happened. But I mean, we have a young, bright crew over there in marketing, and they love what they do. But I don't know if they could do it any other way. I mean, when I talk about rate cards, they have no idea what I'm talking about.
I don't
But
even, what's a rate card?
what's a rate card? It's what we used to use in the newspaper for the newspapers and for the magazines.
What's the
They'd show up
newspaper?
they'd show up with a rate card and tell you how many ads you could buy for, you know, every month or every week and what it was going to cost you. And this is how the rate card worked, and this is how it worked for a full page ad and a half page ad.
And now
Yes.
the whole landscape has changed.
The whole landscape has changed, and now I just tell them stories about the past, and they wonder how we made it through. So, but that's how we made it through.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, we've talked a little bit about community and collaboration.
Mhm.
And so over 35 years, you would have the phone number for basically anybody in town, from an engineering consultant to a specific trade to another builder.
Well, for the most part,
For the most part.
Some of them have retired or they're retiring now.
Yeah.
So now you have to find out who the new people are.
And do you think that sense of community in Calgary specifically is unique to our industry? Because when I talk to people from all walks of design and construction, they say yes,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's actually increased over the last 10 or 15 years, where people are more willing to share information, share contacts.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that to be true?
Absolutely, I do.
And why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think where it started was when you go back to the 80s and you look at the impact that the NEP had on not only the country but the province. And you watched as builders like New West and Kieran's Homes went down. All the larger builders you see now kind of came out of the ashes of that. They all started up then. There were very few that actually made it through. And because of that, they all became kind of close friends. They worked together, they shared knowledge together. They didn't take advantage of each other because, here we are, we're trying to rebuild after all of it. And I think that ethos just kind of carried all the way through. And it really makes Calgary's home building industry, especially, very unique that way. I know because we're dealing down in Dallas now, and boy, oh boy, when you try and have the same conversations with potential competitors, they look at you like, I'm not telling you a damn thing. Why?
Right?
Why? We'll share information with you. We'll play fair with you. I mean, we're not trying to be adversaries. We're trying to be friends. We're trying to work together. So you realize then that it's very unique to Calgary. And like you said, it's only kind of growing. Why? Because we still get together as industry at functions, and we talk to everybody, and we share that information. How are you better, or how can who do you want to know? How can you be better?
Right. I think that's really exciting because Calgary's still growing as a city. And I think we have a super bright future. So, the fact that somebody like yourself recognizes that that's part of our building culture here, that's great news for the industry. And it's great news for consumers and homeowners as well, because overall, we all hold each other to a certain standard.
Yes.
And we build at a certain specification and a certain expectation that's not necessarily found in other cities, even within our province. So I think that, we have some unique insights, but we'll we'll shelve those. Tell me about building across the border.
That's been an interesting one. Our COO, my brother-in-law, he also gets to hold the title of president of Dallas, which is great because Dave is very much on the details, and he went down there and worked hard at opening up that division. He took our VP of Finance with him, and Kate's put together all the other fun stuff like financing and banks and what have you. It's a different culture down there and a different world to work in for sure. But once you're in, they really want to work with you. So now we have a general manager there. We have our first salesperson and our first show home opening up in the end of July, early August.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's exciting.
But we wanted to go there because I wanted that second city. I wanted to get across the border for one, and we had some great opportunities there. And working in that environment kind of reminds me a bit of 1990s Calgary. It was easier to purchase land. It was easier to get it started, and you can build houses in a much quicker time than what you can even here.
And is that because of the weather, or is that because of the trade base? Like, what do you think gives you that?
It's the weather, it's the trade base, but it's that can-do attitude in Texas that I find really works out well. They want to get it done. They don't want to put a bunch of roadblocks in the way. They don't want to give you a bunch of red tape that you have to deal with. But certainly having that trade base helps. They're plentiful down there, and you just have to teach them how to build to your standards. Which is not easy at times, but I mean, it's not impossible.
Right, because you're training essentially a whole new trade base on your specifications and standards from 35 years plus in business.
I mean, we have to start with different product because we're dealing with 60 and 70 foot wide lots. But how do you Calgaryize it? But how do you not offend Dallas buyers? You still have to understand what do they want in a home, and how can you accommodate them that way? So will we take the red pen across the border? Probably not.
Yeah.
That might scare the hell out of the trade base there, but certainly we can come up with pre-designed options that might be more suitable than some of the ones that we've seen so far, where an upgrade to an ensuite is we're just going to make the tub a foot bigger. Can't understand how that's an upgrade, but
Not up
let's
here.
come up with an entirely different ensuite layout because maybe the one that we have isn't conducive to what they want.
And is there other people that we see moving across the border? Because I think that's a big step.
Oh sure. Qualico's down there. There's a few builders that have ventured across the border. I know that Cardell had made that venture years ago, and they're very solid down in Florida and down in Denver. We want to be solid down in Dallas, and then look forward to other cities from there.
It's awesome. I'm sure you guys will smash it. That's exciting. What else is on the roadmap in terms of the next 5 or 10 years for Shane?
It's going to be busy.
It's going to be a busy.
Well, I think for one, I mean, Alberta itself is a very attractive province to a lot of people. If there's a Dallas in Canada, I think this is it right here. We have that can-do attitude. We have that entrepreneurial spirit that I haven't found anywhere else out here in the West. So I mean that certainly bodes well for us, and I think we'll just continue to build. But you're going to see, from our perspective, you're going to see us continue to grow as a single-family home builder, as a multi-family home builder, in land development as well. And and then we're going to grow Dallas too. So we're going to be very busy over the next 10 years.
And what do you think is going to lead to success? Is there like several principles that, as somebody that's been through 35 years and is now gearing up for probably the busiest time ever in the history of the company, what are some of the things that you're pushing from the seat of CEO in terms of strategy and culture that are going to make sure that you guys are successful?
Well, I think it's exactly that. It's going into growth mode, but realizing that you can only grow so much in the confines of Calgary. So we do have to look outside of that to to achieve what we want to. And you might see us involved in other ventures that may or may not be directly related to home building.
Gotcha.
There's different opportunities everywhere, and there might be certain investments that make sense for us to continue to do or add into to the growth of the company.
Very cool. I feel like you know exactly what those are, but you won't tell me. But that's certain.
There are
beads that there
are certain things.
The wheels are spinning already.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Okay.
The wheels are always spinning, and that's what I was telling you earlier on. I don't get as involved in the day-to-day anymore, but certainly just trying to ensure that that the company grows and that it grows intelligently, but not with taking high risks.
Yeah.
Growing slowly and growing manageably. Something that I learned from my father many years ago. With his simple comment is, like he said, "What's wrong with 10% growth every year?"
Right.
He said, "After 10, you've doubled your business," and he said, your stress level and your risk is pretty moderate at that point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, he could never figure out why, looking at some of his competitors, that they wanted to double their volumes in a year.
Well, not all those people are still around.
No, they're not. None of them that I know of, at least.
So, yeah.
But I mean, again, you want it to be controlled growth, and I mean, we've seen it over the last 4 years where things just went wild here in Calgary. It would have been very easy to sell 100 houses a month. Do we have the trade base to build them? No.
No.
Do we think that the quality will be up to our standards? No. And why would you do that to yourself? Yeah. Why would you beat the hell out of yourself just for the sake of making an extra buck?
I don't know, Shane, because we grew very quickly the last 5 years, and it was very painful. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of companies, builders, trades, anybody in the space could benefit from that approach of taking. And we talk about this a lot, like the difference between scaling and the difference between growing. Mm-hmm. And so, measured growth is scaling.
Yes.
Right? Having targets, systems, processes, and not necessarily a cap, but a reasonable target of 10% growth per year.
Yes.
And this is how we're going to achieve that. The plan of getting there is something a lot of companies don't have, regardless of the industry.
Yes.
And so I think you're bang on that measured growth is really important.
Well, we've seen it from all different sides. Home builders, developers, trade supplier partners. Why would you want to do that to yourself?
And lose sleep.
And lose sleep.
Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah.
Fire away.
Tell me about the business.
Sonata. So, we have evolved over the last 11 years. I grew up in the industry. So my dad I'm also a second generation business owner. So the business was started in 86
Mm-hmm.
and then sold in 96. And we moved to the Caribbean where my family's from.
Yes.
And we were there for 2 years, came home, and then the company ran in that iteration from like 97, 98 till 2011. I came out of school. There was some funkiness that happened with the partners. And basically, the resurgence of the company in its latest form, Sonata, was founded by myself in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started as a like 2 product company, window fashions and wall covering. And now we carry, I don't even know how many, 17 different brands of shading suppliers. I don't even know how many fabrics, wall coverings. We do lighting control, smart home. We do custom closet organizers. And then we also do some technology and service work as well,
Mm-hmm.
focused on small business.
So basically everything coming in at the end of the process,
That's exactly right. Yeah. And I think,
which makes perfectly good sense.
it's been a fun ride. I think, I am still passionate about the business and the products and services that we currently carry. But looking forward, I'm really trying to focus on democratizing access to information and technology for small businesses, and specifically those in the trade and design space, because had somebody brought a fraction of what I've been exposed to me 5 years ago, I'd be in a completely different place right now. And so that's, what I'm really focusing on for our next 5 years, while obviously continuing to do a bang up job for our clients.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah,
Do it right.
and I think like the more that I look around the industry, race to the bottom is the wrong word, but I see a lot of people in the finishing trades, especially, where they're only selling or presenting on price, and they're not talking about the experience, and they're not talking about the service. And I still think that overall, some of those people will be successful in picking up contracts and picking up work, but over time, the clients, the homeowners will ultimately realize that there's better options out there, and that sometimes paying 15 or 20% more can lead to double the value in terms
That
of the experience.
is the most important thing. I talked about that earlier on with our trade partners. We don't buy the best price. There are builders out there who will, but it should never come down to just that, because you know what you're going to get with the best price.
Yeah.
You're just going to get quick work, and it's not going to be good.
And then if there are any issues, there's no opportunity typically for those companies to service them, because then they'll be underwater.
They'll be underwater, or they'll push back on having to go back and do it.
Yeah.
So yes, you want a perfect blend. You don't necessarily have to have the best price. You just have to have a fair price, and work from there. But you want that experience. You want to know that there's great two-way communication, and that you're going to stand behind your product offering and your install.
Well, and I think that's another thing we see with, not just our specific category, but lots of different trades that really don't understand that you're an extension of the builder, you're an extension of the designer, you're an extension of the contractor. Like the person that's recommending you or bringing you into the family,
Sure.
right? Like you're essentially part of the team.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of them think about it externally as though, that's just like, that's a client, as opposed to like, I'm representing that person's brand. And I think that's something that
It's a difference between a transaction versus a relationship you're trying to build.
exactly. And so we found that, over time, have we lost contracts based on price? For sure.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, the business has grown year over year because of that focus on relationships.
Mm-hmm. The most important thing still.
I hope so.
That's exactly it. And it's funny you mentioned that with with trade partners out there. I mean, some of them haven't figured that out over 30, 35 years. But some of them are starting to retire now, and I think that's that's an interesting point to bring up, because I think it's one of the greatest opportunities for this generation now. Those
Well,
people are retiring. They may not have a succession plan, or they may not have an exit strategy on their business, so they're shutting it down. This is a great opportunity for another generation to come in, to take that business model and evolve it into something different, because trust me, there's suppliers, there's partners out there who are doing the same thing that they were doing 30, 35 years ago when I started.
Shane, the fact that you just said that like blows my mind. We have so much documentation internally focused around that strategy. And I think you are bang on, because the number of businesses that have significant enterprise value, lines of credit, and customers that are just closing because the founder has reached the age of retirement.
Yeah.
The kids are not interested in doing window fashions or tile work or HVAC or whatever in the design and trade and construction space. And, they're lawyers and doctors and marketing executives, or they're content creators or whatever. And these businesses are just closing. It blows my mind, because there's real enterprise value just like dissipating into the wind. And I have no idea how, but we've been talking about this for years, is how to capitalize on that trend. And I think you're right. Somebody is going to unlock it. I hope it's us, or
You already are.
somebody adjacent to us. Because I get chills talking about this, because I think, you said it. So there's such an opportunity to take these businesses and evolve them. And the time that is now. The tools never existed. You couldn't fully digitize drywall or a plumbing supply company that's been doing things one way for 30 years until the last 18 months.
Yes.
And now you could do that in a number of weeks. And so I really think that resurgence and that evolution of specifically the trade base is going to be something that's going to be really cool to watch. So
I'm looking forward to it.
Well, Shane,
even though I'm at the tail end of my career, I'm looking forward.
If I figure it out, we're going to be knocking on your door and saying, "Hey, can we get in on multiple trades?"
And that's not impossible to see. Again, if the offering is more than what it has been the last 30, 35 years, yes, you have to seriously take a look at that.
Yeah.
But somebody will figure out the innovative approach to it. As you mentioned earlier on, you're basically doing everything from the tail end on, which is ideal. God, I can think back in time to, there was one specific group we went to for vanities. There was one specific group we went to for shower doors. There was one specific group you went to for this, for that. It's like, why can't you guys amalgamate?
like, just integrate.
Can we just have a one-stop shop?
Yeah.
And there was no vision for it at the time.
And now we're starting to see some of that happen. So
yes.
Yeah.
Which is ideal.
And
which
I think
is ideal.
There's all kinds of efficiencies that come with that. So better pricing, better deliverables, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Better product offering as well. And ultimately you're trying to satisfy the end user, your consumer, your purchaser. You're trying to show them this is why you come and buy from us.
And I think that bar of satisfaction has been raised big time.
Oh, sure it has.
The last few years.
Oh yeah.
And I think that expectations of quality and service are sometimes, almost unattainable. Mm-hmm. And so the more that you can do on the front end to make sure that you're delivering, the better. Because that's something that I've definitely noticed, is just attitudes have changed. Mm-hmm. And I think people have less patience and less time. And so they just want things handled. They want them done right the first time. They want a better price. Mm-hmm. People really do want to have their cake and eat it too.
Sure they do. But this is the most expensive purchase in their entire lives. So you can see how that's going to happen. You can see how, that expectation is so high that we have to receive the best value possible for it. And if you're not going to deliver, then of course they're going to be disappointed. They're going to be upset, and you're going to hear it all the time.
Yeah.
So just do it right the first time out, and the rest will work out the way you expected it to. But it goes right back to my comment about setting up that customer experience right up front. They're buying from a personality out there in the show home, and they have to walk them all the way through the process. Some customers require, more information, more hand-holding, because they may not know, and some don't because, they've done a tremendous amount of research and they have an idea what they're getting into. Mm-hmm. But if you can set that expectation up front and not fail on it, you're going to end up with a happy customer at the end of the day.
And that, I think, is ultimately what we all want.
Oh yeah, God, who wants to go out there and fight with people?
Nobody. We talked a little bit about this opportunity that exists in the market
Hmm.
for somebody to come along and innovate, and take some of these legacy businesses that have great relationships and enterprise value and clients and products all figured out, and take them into the future.
Hmm.
What would be some of your tips for somebody that was considering that, or just anybody that might be part of that younger generation that has entrepreneurial aspirations?
Well, first you got to be able to connect them up. Yeah, that's the most important thing. But yeah, I think the fear out there is that if you're buying out an electric company or a painting company, as an example, that you need to have come from that trade. I don't think you do. I think if you're the right entrepreneur, you're simply running a business, and the rest you learn by osmosis when you get into it. And again, there's great opportunities that way because these kids are the future entrepreneurs. And they'll look at it from an entirely different perspective, other than we roll paint on walls. What's the better way to do it? How does that tie into everything else? Is there an opportunity to expand upon all of that? And I think that's what's important is if you can just make that connection right up front, you're going to find that there's this younger generation who are just their brains going to explode, and those are the entrepreneurs who are going to take it to the next level.
And what do you think it takes as an entrepreneur to take something to the next level?
Just a willingness to do it more than anything. They're committed to it. They don't. It's not just a passion. It's not a weekend project. I mean, you've got to be devoted to it, which means you're not going to hire a bunch of people to fill the void. You're going to work in that business. 10, 12, 14 hours a day for the first while as you kind of integrate it. But then you're gonna have to come up with that business plan that makes sense. So hopefully you're connecting with a group that already has some solid contracts, and you can maintain that. But then you can expand it from there.
Shane Holmes always has a lot of active involvement in the Calgary community. Can
Hmm.
you tell us about the specific causes and organizations you choose to support and why you do that?
Why do we do that? Health, wellness, education. That's kind of our motto for donating to a charity or picking up a sponsorship somewhere. It's you, I guess it really goes back to the values of the company. We my father and his business partners started this company 45 years ago, and the simple thought was you can't derive an income from the community without giving back to it.
Mm-hmm.
And as time progressed and the requests became more because we were growing, you had to kind of come up with a bit of a plan as to what are you going to support, what's closest to your heart, and how do you make that how do you make those connections, how do you make that work, and where can you make the most impact. So we did have to come up with a bit of a strategy associated with that. So health, wellness, education as the driver behind it. And you meet with organizations, you got to find that they have passionate people working there, especially their general manager or their CEO. If they're not passionate about it, why the hell would you want to
Support
give
them.
them anything?
Mm-hmm.
What are their administrative costs? There's some charities out there where 60% of what you donate goes to administration. Doesn't that defeat the purpose of charity? You know, I could accept 10%, I could maybe accept 20%, but anywhere past that, that's not charity. That's a business just distributing money.
Right.
So I think we found those connections in the community, and there's a lot of them that I love, like Calgary Minor Soccer. They work on a shoestring budget. That's just fun, seeing these kids playing soccer, because you want them involved in sport. But that organization, they run with about 20 people, and that's about it.
Wow, really?
And they have some of the most dedicated individuals around. When you look at, I'll go back to the Peanut Butter Charity Golf Classic, which is exclusively a women's golf tournament. They are, what is there, 2% administration, because everybody there just donates their time to make this all work, and the proceeds will typically go to Alcove, which is another great connection that we have, which is recovery residence for women. So they might be drug addicted, they might be coming from abused relationships. That's important to them. So, when you can pull off, $250,000 out of a 2-day golf tournament, or a 1-day golf tournament, sorry, uh, and send those proceeds back to something like that, you know that you're making a difference in the community.
Mhm.
And these aren't people who would typically see it.
Mhm.
But they have a dedicated group over at Alcove as well. So, in the past, what we've done is we help them out with the maintenance of their buildings, because they're, again, running on a shoestring budget. They're not, these homes aren't flattering. They're a place for women to come. It's a safe place. So that's a little bit of how we determine how we give back to the community.
So I'm sure in the past 35 years there have been some times where projects may not have gone the way you expected, or there have been some road bumps. Can you tell us a bit about maybe a story or two where you kind of learned something from a failure or something like that?
Oh, there's lots of failures. There's lots of failures. I'd love to say I'm perfect, but I don't think anybody can be. There's been subdivisions that I've turned down that we should have gone into. But there's been failures in the sense of you hired the wrong person, and it hurt your organization dramatically. Because you weren't able to achieve the growth, and you probably ended up losing some good staff in the meantime. So there's decisions like that happen all the time, and I think it goes back to a story that I have from early on in my career. I came into the company as a marketing assistant under my father, which is tough, because he's very demanding. He's a strong A-type personality. He left me to do the ads, and back then, based on the rate card, we were pulling, these little ads in the Calgary Herald for in the classified section, and every week they had to be in, and every week somebody had to approve the copy, and that was me. And we had a couple of locations that just opened up, and I put together the ad copy, but at the time I needed his blessing or his approval on these ads, and I couldn't get it, couldn't find him. Deadline, for Saturday print is Wednesday at 12 noon, and you can't go past that, or it just goes in. I couldn't find him, and he certainly heard that the next morning when he came into the office. And he kind of pulled me aside, and he left me with a saying that I still think of today. He says, "Look, I don't make all the right decisions, but at least I make a decision. The key is to make as many right decisions, more so than wrong decisions." So yeah, it happens. You take something away from it, you learn from it. You're experiencing it right now. You probably made all the right decisions, growing your business, didn't you?
Yeah, right.
But you made the wrong decisions, and you're learning from them.
Yeah.
You might have grown too quick in one direction, and it didn't work out. Why didn't it work out? You're learning something from it.
Exactly.
So just make the damn decision. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
I like that.
In your opinion, what is the most pressing issue in the construction industry that'll kind of come up in the next 20 years, and what your sort of plan to overcome that is? Sorry, big question.
Oh,
Yeah.
There's
why?
about 100 different ways I could go with answering that question. I'll stay away from the politics of it at this point. But it is going to come back to succession planning.
Yeah.
You do have a bunch of aging founders. Some of them are retired, some of them are close to retiring, and you may not have a succession plan in place for that business, which is hard to believe, isn't it? You have companies that are worth $250 million to $500 million, and they don't have a succession plan. They're kind of flying by the seat of their pants. These are companies that don't even do strategic planning sessions every year. So I think that's going to be a pressing problem, because you could lose some very good businesses just because they're not looking forward. Now, I mean, there'll be groups that come in and fill the gap, but will they be the same? Will they have the same product offering, or will we have a major gap that way? I mean, to that point, again, I always kind of harp on the trades. Which can be as big of a problem. There's not many young people going into the trades yet. we're trying, we're working on it. You know, how are you going to fill that void? Because you're losing a tremendous amount of intellectual capital right now.
It's already a problem.
You got 20% of your trade workforce retiring every year. And you have about 10% of the kids coming into the trade. So how do you fill that void? Through immigration? Sure. But, you know, does someone coming from the Middle East understand how we do drywall here as an example? You know, they might be great at plaster. How do you fill that gap? How do you know, they're good at that trade there, but we just don't do plaster here. So how do you make them understand drywall? Mm-hmm. You know, these are the kind of things that keep me up at night.
Me too.
Right? You know, I can sell them, but if I can't build them, then we're in trouble. It already takes longer to build houses now than it did 10 years ago.
And I think that the issue is that the space between when we're going to be short on supply of technical trades and when the next generation will be trained and ready, there's going to be a gap.
There is most definitely a gap. It's apparent right now. It's been apparent for the last 10, 15 years. And that's largely because parents, you know, viewed the trades as something that they didn't want their kids getting into. It was unsafe. It didn't pay enough. Well, try telling that to, you know, some framing crews out there where the lead is making $250,000 a year. Mm-hmm. That's pretty good. It's better than going and working in the bank, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, some people can code, some people can't code, some people are good with their hands. You know, so why deny what, you know, what is probably more conducive to what they should be doing as a career?
100%. And I think we're finally seeing the efforts of industry and of the government in some capacity fostering and directing people into the trades. Mm-hmm. But those people are all 15 to 16 years old right now. Mm-hmm. So by the time they're trained, skilled up, experienced enough, we're looking at least 10 years.
It's going to be a real challenge moving forward.
That's a good question, Chris.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Shane.
All right. Thanks, fellas.
Really appreciate you sitting down with us.
Terrell, thank you very much.
It was my absolute pleasure. I know you're very busy guy, so I'll let you get back to your day.
All right.
Thanks, sir.